Does this place look haunted?
No, I don't think so.
What about those two creepy girls?
Come stay with us.
That is truly frightening.
You know what's really scary? Missing out on Geico's great service. With Geico, you get 24/7 access to licensed agents.
Thank you, creepy girls.
Want to see our room?
We're gonna sleep in the car now.
Happy Geico-ween. Switch today for 24/7 access to licensed agents.
I'm a lifelong Southerner married to an Indian man who grew up in South Africa during apartheid, and I am fiercely proud of both. If you don't like that, well, bless your heart. I'm Sheryl Parbhoo, and this is Southern Life, Indian Wife. Well, here we go again.
Yes, ma'am.
Welcome back to Southern Life, Indian Wife.
Thank you for having me.
So if you're new to the podcast, you didn't hear my earlier episode with Heather Dobson, but Heather Dobson is an author. There's her book.
There's my baby.
Memoirs of a Future Ghost. And she is also a dear friend of mine, a former neighbor, and a paranormal investigator.
I look for ghosts.
Yes. And in our earlier episode, we just talked about just different things about her life, what it's like to chase ghosts and what it's like to hear a ghost say, "Get out of the room," which totally freaked me out. But today we're going to talk about what it was like to write our books and why we wrote our books, because she wrote a memoir and I wrote a novel. This was my first book, The Unexpected Daughter. And even though it's fiction, it's very memoir-esque. I put a lot of myself into it. And I know you put most of yourself into your memoir.
Into mine.
Yeah. And so we're going to talk about why we writers write what we do. And my theory is that we're pretty crazy.
Yes.
I think there's like a whole lot of wacky mental illness that goes into wanting to write a book, taking the time out of your life to write a book.
Yes.
Yeah, and the stuff that we put in it.
Yes, very much so.
Yeah. So basically when I do talks about my book, I just tell people that it was cheaper to write the book than therapy.
Yes.
And in a way it was, because writing the book was cheap. Now the editing and all of that stuff was not cheap. We don't need to talk about that.
Yeah.
So was writing Memoirs of a Future Ghost kind of therapeutic for you?
It was very therapeutic. And honestly, for me, investigating the paranormal was my first set of therapy, my first round of therapy, because, you know, I had, if you listen to the previous podcast, you know, I talked about my anxiety with death and, you know, my issues with that. And so I needed to investigate the paranormal to understand what death is all about. And so, you know, the writing my book was very therapeutic, and in a sense that I could take that anxiety and show it to other people so that maybe they don't feel so alone, and share that and help them understand you're not alone. You know, when it's dark at night and you're laying in bed and your mind is racing, it's okay. There are other people out there going through the same thing, and there are answers.
Okay.
So, yeah.
Yeah, that makes sense. And, you know, one of the reasons that I wrote my novel was for the same reason. You know, part of it was purging all of my ghosts and the demons and all the icky stuff I couldn't say to people in my real life. But I disguised it in fun ways with, you know, fictional characters.
Oh, I love that.
Yeah. Oh, it was so fun. But a lot of it is, you know, showing people that they're not alone. The book is about, you know, an intercultural relationship and family with Indian tradition and how it clashes with Southern white culture and, you know, these crazy people. But you don't have to be Indian or Southern to get something out of it.
Right. Exactly. And I think even too, just something as not so different as Indian versus Southern American, just a Southerner marrying a Yankee.
Yes.
Or, you know, just anything like that. There is such a culture clash even within our own country. And sometimes I feel that with my husband a little bit because, you know, I'm a hillbilly and he's a good Southern boy. And it's like,
yeah,
there's a big difference.
There is a big difference.
But no, and that's good that you were able to write that and, you know, show other people who are in multicultural relationships, or even just whether it's a marriage or just dating or just friends to, you know, share that with people.
Yeah. And I think that's the beauty of any kind of book, whether it's a memoir or fiction. you put yourself in somebody else's shoes,
Right.
and you see or feel a part of yourself in whatever you're reading.
Right.
And you bring something of yourself that's different than even what the author intended,
Right.
I think.
Well, I always feel like there's a nugget of truth in every book, whether it's fiction or nonfiction, or especially if it's nonfiction. But if it's fiction, the author is always in there somewhere.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember, back in college reading Interview with a Vampire by Anne Rice.
Oh, that was the best book.
Absolutely adored that book. And then later on reading that, her daughter had died from leukemia.
Oh, I didn't.
And so the character of the little girl vampire, I can't remember her name for the life of me. That was her daughter.
Kirsten Dunst.
Yeah. Yeah. The actress. But that was her daughter. That was her way of keeping her daughter alive.
Okay.
And so
Wow.
it was like, okay, even in a book about vampires, there's a piece of the author's life in that book. And,
that turns you on to reading.
exactly.
Yeah.
And it makes you want to read it and find out more about that person. And yep.
And I always feel like there's such a power to stories, whether they're in a book or, stories being told on a podcast,
Right.
or even, a series that you binge watch on Netflix. There's that power to stories that
Right.
people crave.
Right.
So let's just kind of give a rundown on each of the books so that people that are listening
Sure.
or watching kind of know what we're talking about.
Yes.
So you go first.
So Memoirs of a Future Ghost, it's about my experiences as a paranormal investigator. It actually started out as a much longer book, twice this size. So I cut it in half. The second book will be out next summer. And this book starts out with my childhood, growing up in West Virginia in the land of the paranormal, and really exploring my anxiety over death and how I coped with that by joining an investigative group. And the second book will cover more of those investigations, but some of the investigations are in here and the experiences I've had, the ghosts I've seen, and that type of thing. So,
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay. I've been to one of your presentations with the video and the audio from your investigations, and I wanted to cry. I went away.
yeah. Yeah.
So my hat goes off to you for doing that. Wow.
Thank you.
Wow. Okay. So The Unexpected Daughter is, it's got three main characters. It's about Jenny, who is a young dentist from South Georgia who goes to dental school in Memphis. And she meets this very dashingly handsome Indian guy who's in her class. And he's just kind of, he's just kind of a party guy. They just become friends and do their study dates. And the night of their graduation, they consummate their secret crushes
There you go.
that they had on each other. So basically they hook up and they wake up the next morning and they're like, oh crap, what did we do? And they're wrestling with their feelings. She knows he's already engaged in an arranged marriage to an Indian woman, and she wants nothing to do with having a relationship, but she's like, oh, I really like this guy. Well, what cinches it for her is that she's getting ready to do the walk of shame, cleaning up in the bathroom. And his mother, with her dangly bangles and a haul of food, uses her key to let herself into his apartment to deliver him breakfast.
Lovely.
Yes. And of
No
course,
boundaries.
no boundaries. So of course, Jenny is looking like the hoe
Yep.
to this traditional Indian mom. And there you go. They just decide they cannot have a relationship. Oh, I don't know if I mentioned the other characters' names. Roshan is the guy and his mother's name is Isha. And so Roshan goes his separate way, goes ahead through with his arranged marriage. He and his wife and his mother have a traditional Indian life living together.
Right.
Jenny goes off and does her thing and makes her money at her practice and doesn't have a man in her life. She just doesn't have time for that. And she and Roshan meet back up again a decade later at a dental conference, which is very similar to a dental conference that's held here in Atlanta, Georgia, that I've
There you
been
go.
to and seen a few scandalous things.
Perfect.
And they hook back up there, and the rest just turns into tragedy and deceit and love and passion and all kinds of fun stuff.
That's awesome.
Yes, that is my novel.
Yes. And it's a good one.
Why, thank you.
Read it.
Yes, and read Memoirs of a Future Ghost.
Yes.
Absolutely. So let's talk a little bit about being crazy.
Yes.
We authors are crazy.
Mhm.
Most people know about the famous Ernest Hemingway, how he was an alcoholic
Mhm.
and he committed suicide.
Mhm.
And he wrote his books while he was drunk because
Right.
he suffered from all of this depression. And, writing was part of either contributing to or purging his mental illness. I don't
Mhm.
know. He's not here to talk about it.
Right.
And for me, writing The Unexpected Daughter was similar to that because I was raising 5 kids, trying to figure out who I was, wrestling with all of this cultural Indian stuff with my Indian husband and mother-in-law and father-in-law and a bunch of kids, and going through a tough time in my marriage. And so totally it was therapy.
Mhm.
And I would sit down and cry when I was writing this book.
Yeah.
So was it like that for you?
It was, because not only was it, not only am I talking about the investigations I've gone on, but, I also talked about my father's death in here. There's also some mother-daughter issues that I go through. And I remember the chapter about my father's death and writing it and sending it off to our editor.
Yes. We share an editor. His name is Wayne
And
South
he's
Smith.
amazing.
Yes.
I don't know what I'd do without him.
Me either.
And the response I got from him was, I want more. And I remember crying while I was writing this chapter, giving him more. And, after I finished it, I gorged on chocolate and sent him an email. And I was like, I'm done. I love you, but I'm done.
That's all I can give right now.
Exactly. And it still makes me cry. I mean, I read the chapter to my grandmother who's blind and can't read on her own. And unfortunately, I don't have this on audio for her. And so I read that chapter to her and cried again.
Wow.
And so it's very therapeutic to get that out there and share that and to be able to, like I said, share that with people and let them know that they're not alone. It's, it's been 21 years and I still cry over his death. So
yeah, that's got to be really, really hard.
it is.
And okay, since this is a memoir, and we all know that, or if you don't know, memoir is about a theme or a part of your life.
Mhm.
It's not an autobiography.
Mhm.
And there are characters in your life that participate in these stories,
Exactly.
but you can't name these people. You have to disguise these people.
I
a
have
little
to
bit.
disguise our clients,
Mhm.
Paranormal Georgia's clients. My fellow investigators, they're like, oh, heck yeah, use my name. So when you see the name Jordan or Tammy or Clint, those are real people and those are their real names. But when you read about the client who believed aliens were landing in his backyard and his name is Fox, well, his name really isn't Fox.
Yeah.
those-
Crazy like a fox.
Fox Mulder. More like
okay.
taking it from Fox Mulder, but it could be crazy like a fox.
Yeah.
Some of the genders I've changed.
Uh-huh.
Towns they lived in, I've changed because, I don't want people and I don't want them to recognize themselves in this book. Some investigations I combined.
Okay.
And merged and yeah. So I did have to create characters. The settings happened. In my second book, there's a chapter about investigating a driveway.
What?
Yes, I investigated a driveway.
So somebody had a ghost walking up and down their driveway?
This is nuts.
How do you tell? Because there's no doors to open.
I
and
know,
close,
right? Exactly.
No floors to create.
Exactly. Yeah. Okay. So, but, I changed the name of the couple and I changed the location and the dialogue is a little bit different. But yes, I investigated a driveway in Atlanta.
Okay.
There you go.
To each his own.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Whatever.
Wow. Well, were there any instances in there where you felt like you were going to offend somebody? Maybe not a client. But somebody
Probably
in your life. And
yeah.
did that worry you? Did that give you anxiety?
I would say that the biggest anxiety with this book is just the previous investigative team that I was a member of.
Mm-hmm.
The person who founded that team and ran it for a long time is, a nice person overall. If you were to meet her, you would think she was nice, but she didn't have very good managerial skills, honestly. And so I changed her name. I changed the name of the investigative group, but she will know that it's her.
Okay.
And I do worry about her response, if she's going to have a response or she'll even read it.
Yeah.
You know,
Maybe she won't.
maybe she won't, but that's about it.
But if she's depicted as, not a likable person, perhaps she won't come out because people don't want to claim, oh, that's me.
That's totally
I
me.
act like an ass in the book.
That's totally me.
Yeah.
And then I do mention in passing, because this book does talk about my childhood, a little bit about my teenage years. So I do mention in passing the not so great freshman roommate I had in college. And I know she's reading the book because she bought a copy from me.
Oh. Okay.
I mentioned in passing that, junior high was great and high school was awful because of some of my friends. And I know a couple of those friends have ordered copies of the book. So it's like, I don't call people out by name, but I am honest in that, people made my life a little bit difficult.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's okay. I hope you still like it.
Yeah. Well,
because that's the hard part about a memoir
mm-hmm.
is that, you're trying to be honest, but you can't, you have to bear that honesty. You have to put it out there and you can't hide it. And, even though you're not mentioning names, sometimes that person's going to read it and know that that was them. They were the cause of that.
And, you talk about how you have to bear the results of that honesty.
Mm-hmm.
And for me, I had this story that had to get out
mm-hmm.
about sort of the things that I was going through. But the reason I put it into fiction form is because I couldn't bear it yet.
Right.
And I remember when I was writing the book, I didn't tell anybody I was writing a book. Most of my friends didn't even know that I had a blog.
Yeah.
But I was writing all of these things, and it was easier for me to put my life out there for the online world, the
mm-hmm.
international world, than for me to talk about it with my neighbors at the pool or, happy hour.
Right.
And I would sit in Starbucks working on this dang book for 3 or 4 years, isolated.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm working out my stories and turning these characters into fictional characters that no one would recognize. And I wasn't even willing to come out of the closet and say I was writing because I was afraid of the reaction that people were going to give me.
Right.
Either they were going to say you're a fraud and you can't write a book and it sucks. You have no right to do this.
Exactly.
Or you're writing about me.
Mm-hmm.
And
mm-hmm.
the stuff that I was writing about, it was all this family stuff. Like, because my husband is Indian, he's very Americanized, but we still had so many differences in, how you relate to parents. What role do your parents have? Can your parents come into your house, with their house key and walk in on you, when you're just getting out of the shower?
Right.
No, we had those issues, but I couldn't write that in the book.
Exactly.
So I had to turn the in-laws into even crazier people.
Right. That they're not recognizable.
Yeah.
But there is a grain of truth in there.
Definitely.
Yeah.
And
but here's the thing. Even though there are instances in this book that may not, and people in this book that may not look their best
mm-hmm.
because of what happened, I have a very wise sorority sister. Like, she had the mentality of a 100-year-old when she was a teenager. And it's because of her that, I feel like I've learned a lot of good life lessons from her. Lori Ann, I'm talking about you. As human beings, we learn constantly. And even when bad things happen, you're learning.
Mm-hmm.
Now, the woman that I talk about who ran the previous paranormal investigative group, do I want to go out and have a beer with her? Not really. But I learned from her.
Mm-hmm.
And I learned valuable things from that experience. And I appreciate that.
Yes.
That I've learned from that. And, whether she meant to or not, we're all providing life lessons for the people around us.
Mm-hmm.
And even if it's negative in nature, I appreciate what I took away from that relationship with her. And I thank her for that.
Yeah. Yeah. There's a place in your world, in your universe for that to have happened.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And that's fine. That's fine.
And it's very therapeutic to just get it out there on the paper.
Exactly.
Yeah. I was going to therapy during the time that I was writing this. And I mean, my therapist was good in a lot of ways, but she would downplay the role of what this writing had for me in my life.
Yeah.
And I would say, look, this is my story. I'm getting it out there. I cry when I do it, but it's good. It's out. And she would say, you know what is going to fix you? You need to just go get a corporate job, quit writing a book and make yourself feel useful in the real world. And I was like, honey, you don't know you're talking to a writer. I can't not write.
No.
Yeah. So I quit going to her and I just finished the damn book.
Good for you. Good for you. Because one of my favorite movies is Clerks. And one of my favorite quotes from Clerks is, you hate people, but I love gatherings. And that's me. It's not that, I don't like interacting with people on a daily basis. And that's what's great about writing is that I can interact with people from afar. And a corporate job would not.
No, that's not me. Not at all.
No.
But, you talk about how you aren't interacting with people on a daily basis when you're writing. And for me, that's a good thing, because I'm in my head and writing, but also it fed into that crazy, and it still does because I'm writing another book. And maybe I'm just crazier than you. I don't know.
There you go.
That could very well be.
That's okay.
But when you're sitting there in front of the laptop by yourself, you're in this world and you're in a room with the windows closed, the shades closed or whatever. It is isolating. And there have been times when I've gotten depressed because I'm just there by myself and I'm trying to get this done. So does it ever have that opposite effect for you?
I feel very refreshed after I write.
Okay.
I feel re-energized because I thrive on that alone time. Being with people. I mean, I enjoy being with people. Like I'm going to go out to dinner with some girlfriends Thursday night and I'm going to enjoy that. But then I'm going to need to come home and not talk to anyone for a couple of hours. And so when I write, I've got my little corner and I can see outside and I can see the trees and I play my 40s music, so I got Bing going and I got Frank going and I'm in a zone and it makes me very happy. And I would say I get depressed when I go back and reread my stuff because then I'm like, this is crap. This is crap. This is ridiculous. I hate this.
It sounded fabulous when I was writing.
And then I don't even touch my desk for days and days. So I feel like if I write, I'm good. If I go back and read, that's bad.
Yeah, I agree.
I can't reread it. It's just going to have to go to Wayne, no matter the state it's in.
I've used him a lot for that. He's wonderful.
In fact, the second book, I just sent my second book to edits and there was a chapter that I was really excited about writing. It was going to be such a fun chapter. It's crap, guys. It's awful. I hate that chapter. And in fact, I sent it to him with a comment that said, I hate this chapter. I hate this chapter. So I have no idea what's going to happen to it, but we'll see.
He's going to give you some uplifting comment about how basically A for effort, redo it. But that he'll help you.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Well, the writing, I get depressed sometimes. I get sort of, this is fantastic, but maybe I just need to take a little more Prozac and just move forward. Maybe that'll help me just finish the book.
2 Zoloft today instead of just 1.
And then maybe a glass of wine. No, that would be bad.
That would be bad.
I don't know. You probably know the phrase that people attribute to Ernest Hemingway, but he didn't really say it. Write drunk, edit sober. Yeah. I have written after like the 3rd glass of wine, but it is amazing in the moment. And then the next day it's crap.
It's crap. Yeah. Well, for me, I'm not a big drinker. I've never really enjoyed alcohol. So for me, it's more, I drink or I write and I edit sober, but like, the chapter about my father, the chapter where I talk about, my family getting blown up when I was 12 years old.
Oh, wow.
I write that and then I go get a large quantity of chocolate and I watch reruns of TJ Hooker.
TJ Hooker. I haven't thought about that show.
Oh my gosh, I love that show. So that's my therapy. Okay. I've put that on paper and that was horrifying. And so now I'm going to go eat chocolate and watch crappy 80s TV.
Awesome. Awesome.
So that's what I do.
That sounds like fun. Okay. So are there any memoirs that you've read before that you really like? Did any inspire you to write this? Because I've got a few.
Well, it's funny because the memoirs that I like to read are about the British royal family because I'm obsessed with royalty. Oh my gosh. Princess Margaret, Queen Elizabeth, the Duchess of York. I just love it all.
Yeah, what is it that you love about them? Because I look at them on TV and I'm like, you know what? They think they're all that. And they're just, they're involved in these sex trafficking scandals.
I know. Prince Andrew's really disappointing me right now.
Yeah. They're pretty, but what's behind it all?
But I don't know. I guess it's just because as an American, there is no monarchy. It's just the idea of this family that is royalty simply due to birthright. Yeah. And, sparkly jewels might have something to do with it.
Well, yeah.
Pretty dresses and the titles. But I don't know. And so I would have to say that those are my favorite biographies and memoirs to read. My favorite nonfiction author is Bill Bryson. And he's written about language. He's written about England. He's written about his life. He wrote a book about science, like this crazy, huge book, coming from a man who knows nothing about science. He wrote about everything science. He wrote about the home. Why do we call it the foyer? Why do we call it the kitchen? Why are certain things the way they are in our homes? Anyway.
All these things that I've never once given a thought to, but it's interesting.
Exactly. But he was born in Kansas and he's lived his adult life in the UK. So he's got this funny sort of Midwestern sensibility with a British sense of humor. And I love his stuff. Like if I could write like him, my day would be made. He's my favorite nonfiction / memoir author.
Okay.
So, yeah.
So you like to read about the upper class, stepping up above where you are.
Yes.
And I like to read about the people that are coming from the down and dirty.
Yeah.
Maybe it's because I like to feel a little superior.
There you
I
go.
don't know.
Yeah.
But The Glass Castle, Giant Walls.
Right.
Have you read that?
No, I haven't.
That is about a woman who comes from the coal hills of West Virginia.
Interesting.
And, the interesting upbringing that she has with parents who, I don't know if she comes out and says it, but I'm assuming that they have mental illness. And they end up living in, I think they're squatters in an apartment in New York City. When she discovers her mother going through the trash as she's on her way to a gala for, I don't remember all the details, but she's an editor, a high priced editor in New York City.
Right.
So and my family's from Kentucky and they're not from the hills of Kentucky, but they're good people.
Yeah.
My mom said that some of her relatives just a generation ago lived with chickens in their house.
Right.
So that's where they came from.
Right.
And then Hillbilly Elegy.
Okay.
By J.D. Vance.
Okay.
Have you read this one? Oh,
no.
That's a must read. It's been kind of panned by critics because people say that he doesn't really give an accurate portrayal of what the hillbilly life was in Kentucky.
Right.
But I just like it because I can relate to it. And there's a lot of good that is in there. There's a lot of truth in there. And I think I don't think any memoir is a complete truth.
No.
And his is not a complete truth, but it has meaning and it has a story to it.
Right.
And, he came from beginnings that were more meager than mine. And so I do feel a little bit like I didn't have it quite so bad.
Well, talking about those books, it's my paternal grandfather was a coal miner and he died from black lung. And I have coal mining family cousins who, had siblings who died from a spinal meningitis outbreak due to flooding of Paint Creek in West Virginia. And so I guess maybe that's why I don't enjoy reading those stories, because even though I personally did not grow up in a coal mining town, I heard those stories as a child growing up from my father and my cousins. And it's like, okay, Queen Elizabeth, make my day better.
Yeah. Yeah.
Talk to me about your nannies and your titles. And
some of that stuff is a little too close to home.
Yeah. I'm good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Huh, definitely. Yeah. You got to do what makes you feel good.
Exactly.
Yeah. Have you done any book clubs? Because I do book clubs with my novel.
Yeah, I have not.
Okay. So if you're listening or watching, you definitely need to have your book club read Memoirs of a Future Ghost. But when you do a book club, you're going to get questions, and there's going to be common questions that readers will ask you.
Right.
There's just seems to be themes that come from everybody. So I just wanted to share some of those. The very first question that I get from people across the board is, how much of this book is the true story?
Right.
And none of it's the true story.
Right.
It's based on feelings. It's based on things that I've learned, but none of it is true. It's fiction.
Right.
And so we need to make that clarification for people. Novel is fiction. Novel is fiction.
Right.
It's not real. Memoir, nonfiction, it's real.
It's real.
Yeah.
Yes.
So just so people know that, because everybody they don't remember everything from 8th grade English.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Lord, I know I don't.
No, for sure. And people will tell me, oh, I learned a lot about Indian food and Indian culture which is kind of cool.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So, that makes me.
Well, and I would say too, it's almost like, and that's a good thing, especially in the United States, considering that we have so much exposure to like Chinese culture because of the 19th century influx of, Chinese immigrants, and Italian culture, and, south of the border, Mexican, Central American. But Indian really isn't a culture that most Southern Americans are exposed to.
Yeah.
And so your book has done an amazing thing with exposing everyone to that side of the world. So, yeah.
I guess so. It really has provided some sort of education.
Yes.
And, talking about how people are not really familiar with Indian culture, it blew me away and really came into focus last week when there's a book reviewer author Facebook group, and a bunch of authors did giveaways on this group. And you were supposed to tell about your book and then ask your potential readers a question, and their answer to the question was the entry to the contest to win a free book from you.
Right.
And so my question was, I told them about the Indian culture and the story, and I said, what is your favorite Indian food? And if you've never tried it, why the heck not? Right. And I would say over 50%, maybe even closer to 75% of the people, and this is international members, I've never tried Indian food.
Oh, wow.
What is Indian food? And I'm like, what? How is that even possible? Because I've been living in this for, almost 30 years. How is that possible?
Well, and I had an older family member who I mentioned your book to them, and they thought I was talking about Native Americans. Oh. So in her mind, she's thinking you're married to like a Cherokee gentleman or something. I'm like, no. Yeah. Indian.
People are pretty misinformed. And, this is probably going to offend somebody, but it is something that people say when South Asian Indian people, to be funny, when they're asked, oh, what tribe are you from? They'll say, no, I'm dot, not feather. It's not meant to offend.
There you go.
You have to put it on the level that some people can understand.
Exactly.
It's not necessarily because they're stupid. They just haven't learned.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah. I ran into someone at a school who was a recent anthropology PhD. Okay.
Wow.
Told him about my story. I was very clear in the details of my life, my story, South Asian culture. And he asked me, after the whole thing, what tribe is your husband from? I don't know where he got that PhD from.
It's like blink, blink.
Yeah.
Blink, blink.
So would you give any advice to anyone that comes up to you? Because this is going to happen. Oh, you're an author. I've always wanted to write a book. Or you're an author. I've always wanted to write a book. Here's the story. Would you like to hear it? And they tell you. Yeah. So if you have somebody come up to you and say, really, I've wanted to do what you do.
Yeah.
How do I do it?
It's funny because I had no idea how to do it when I started doing it almost 3 years ago. It was just, and I had known for a long time that I wanted to write, and I had talked to you, and you had mentioned, oh yeah, I'm writing a book. And I'm like, how is she doing that? 5 kids.
Because she's crazy and she drinks wine.
And so honestly, having you tell me you were writing a book was like, what is my damage? Like, why can't I write a book? What's my problem? If Sheryl can do it, why can't I do it? Because she's so busy and I think even at the time, weren't you going back to school?
I was.
Oh my gosh.
I was in school full time, student teaching.
Stay at home mom, student teaching, going to school, writing a book. I was like,
yeah, but
all I'm doing is watching TJ Hooker. Okay. Why can't I write a book? And so my advice to people would be start writing. Don't think about it. Pick what you want to write. And even if you haven't chosen, even if you're like, wow, do I do a memoir? Do I do a romance? Do I do a murder mystery? Just start putting down chapters. Just start with short stories, start with a chapter idea and start building from there. And talk to other writers.
That was what I was going to say. Yeah. Get that community going.
Talk to people about, your process, and not everybody's process is the same, but if you pick and choose from what works for other people, it might work for you as well. And when you start getting that community going of other writers, that's when you get editors. That's when I need to, if you decide to self-publish, okay, I need to do this to market my book. I need to do that. I need to do the legwork. But it definitely helps to have that community to talk to and to also encourage you. But I mean, the first step is always the step that you have to take of sitting down at your computer or sitting down with your notebook and getting it on paper.
Yeah, I think giving yourself permission.
Right.
And it's okay to get it out.
It's okay to get it out. It's okay to suck. It's okay to write crappy stuff. I mean, because I have a whole book at home of really bad poetry. I mean, that's what I started out doing. Oh, it's really bad. No, it's never going to see the light of day, by the way. Never. Yeah. That's like in my will. Like burn me with the book.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Burn
it needs to go away.
Yeah.
But it's okay. And it's okay to have those notebooks of things that you put aside that never see the light of day because it does take practice. It's like playing the piano. It's like doing embroidery. It takes practice.
Yeah.
And the more you do it, the better you get at it.
Oh, definitely. Absolutely.
So, yeah.
Yeah. And if you're somebody who isn't interested in writing, because there's a whole lot of people out there that's just not their thing.
Right.
But you're feeling crazy and you need to know that somebody else out there is going through things. Memoirs and, fiction, they're just such a great resource.
Yeah.
So, if there's somebody out there right now that's struggling with their fear of death or really curious about, the things that go bump in the night in their house, they need to read your book because they know that you've been through that.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah. And anybody that might be going through, marriage, family issues, there's all kinds of issues going on in my crazy book. Cause so pretty much, pick your crazy poison and it's in there.
Right.
You can get something out of that.
Exactly.
Yeah. So I guess the message is pick up a book. Just pick up a book. It helps you so much mentally. And if you're inclined, write one. And yeah, it's great there.
And you're going to find, and definitely read as an author, you should still be reading. And, you're going to find voices that really appeal to you. And like Jenny Lawson, she started out as a blogger, the Blogess, and I love her stuff. She cracks me up. I was reading her back before she published her first book, Let's Pretend This Never Happened. And, I love her voice. Would I love to be her? Probably not, because when we talk about depression and anxiety and that kind of thing, she's got it in spades. But I would love to have her voice. Like her voice appeals to me so much. And so, don't plagiarize your favorite authors, but, find a voice of an author that you like and try that voice on for size and see when it's mixed with your voice, does that work for you? And, that type of thing. So,
yeah, I agree. And, even if you're not a writer, that's so key in finding a book that you connect with.
Yeah.
Is you can just tell in the first few pages, maybe a great story, but, I don't like the writing style.
Right.
Or it may have a fantastic writing style and you weren't necessarily interested in the story, but you get hooked.
Right.
You just have to find that.
Right.
Yeah. Okay. So what's next for you? You have another.
Yeah, I've got, so the second book will be Recollections of a Future Ghost, and it's continuation of this. And it's more about the investigations that I've done and just the different scenarios that I've had to come up against investigating the paranormal. And I think, what inspired me to do this book was, in the first place, was just watching the paranormal reality shows that aren't anything like reality. I'm not like Zach Bagans. I don't get possessed every investigation. We don't always find evidence. And most of the time, the living is more interesting and more scary than the dead.
I can definitely see that.
And more tragic. And so, I wanted to write books that were more of a reality about investigating the paranormal than what you see on Saturday night television.
Okay.
And so I've got, and there will be a third book. So there will be a trilogy of sorts. And then actually I already have an idea for my fourth book, which won't be anything like this or the other two. It would be more in line with The Unexpected Daughter, of pulling from my life and my experiences and writing a fictional novel.
Ooh,
so
that sounds exciting too.
Yeah. Well, I don't know.
Yeah.
They're, it's that moment of, I know people are going to recognize themselves and it's not going to make them happy, but I got to get it out.
Well, yeah, you got to get it out, and you just make sure that you talk to an attorney and make sure you cover your butt so that nobody can sue you.
Oh my gosh. But I've changed genders and names.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
But yeah, so that I actually, I'm already Because as an author, that's the other hard part about being an author. It's like you can't really bask in this glow.
No.
Because you've got to have number 2 in the works and then number 3 and the
Yeah, you've got people like me saying, okay, you just put this book out. What's next?
What's next?
Yeah. And I've taken, it's 2 years since The Unexpected Daughter was published, and it's taken me that long to almost finish my second book.
Right.
So I'm a little behind the game.
Right.
But my next book is a memoir, and it's going to be called Southern Life, Indian Wife, just like the podcast.
Excellent.
And that is the true story. And that, people ask me that after book clubs. What is the true story? Well, if you've read The Unexpected Daughter, you're going to love the memoir because it starts the night that my husband and I get divorced. That's the scene where he comes home from court with the court documents. He comes home, not to an apartment. He comes home because he still lives with us.
Right.
And we look at each other and we're friends, and then we huff and puff and turn away from each other, and that's it. And then it's the story of how we met and struggled. I struggled through the Indian culture here in the South and our divorce and the stalker that let himself into my house, which was super fun.
Oh my gosh.
And how we both were able to kind of be apart and find out who we were. And then I won't tell you the rest, but it's happy. Yay. And so that should be out in a few months.
Good.
Yeah. Yay.
Excellent.
Okay. And I probably will be drinking wine or taking Prozac or one or the other because I do need to do that.
Yes.
Writing is therapy, but then the book is done and you have to move on to something else.
Exactly.
Have those demons.
Exactly.
So, well, thank you for being here to talk
Thanks
about
for having me. Of course.
Your process.
Thank you, ma'am.
Yes. I hope to have you again.
Of course.
Okay.
I would love to come back.
Best of luck with Memoirs of a Future Ghost. And it'll be on my website where you can find signed copies
Yes.
and where you can order it from and where you can see Heather in events.
Yes, most definitely.
All right. Thanks.
Thank you.
If you like this podcast so far, please continue following along by tapping the subscribe button wherever you listen to podcasts. If you really liked it, go on, be awesome, and leave a rating and a review. Find me on all social media too by searching Sheryl with an S, Parbhoo, that's Parbhoo. Thanks for listening to Southern Life, Indian Wife.
Are you an experienced driver looking for a career that pays well and offers vacation days from the start? If so, then drive for Penske. Talk to a Penske representative today and apply now. Call 855-CDL-PENSKE. Start driving with Penske today.